Mga Pinay pa, Bisaya pa, ganun, papuyag. Nag-abroad lagi niya yung alaga 14, 16 kay yung gipakuon. Bastos ka ayun.
Babae?
Babae, yung alaga nga lalaki.
Mga bata?
Mga bata. Yung kita-hikap niya ha, yung kita ng ipampay.
Peso siya?
Preso ka. Mayroon, ipapreso, ipapuktan ang kuan.
Siya mo yung sunod na.
Siya pa yung dito.
Eh, yung gipos?
Naak siguro, nakuha siguro siya sa CCTV. Ganang ko bang mga hacker ba? Kasi kala na na le. Kanang makakuha kay video le. Kanang makakuha o video ba? Pinaaki lang sa CCTV. Copyright ka mo?
Makapiright ka nag-music ang silingan.
Dakuyaw. Wala pa rips. Pag-sure, ay!
Nakakadungog ba kayo? Sabang ano si Ate?
Mula was ba, kay feeling na ko kay gamay ko. Sa video. Iyan. Kasugod ko, pagkadako, binukato namang pag-pandemic, no? So, pag sugod ako minukos ba? Minukos ito ko. Ito na kung kasugod ko kalang kadako. Sa Tijina, kayo wala may ngunit ako kayo sa Tijina, no? Ha?
Dahil, kung mag-pupuyag mo yung bata, kanang mag-jogging, exercise, muna
May
yung
sa Tijina, kayo kuan, mag-good siya, bin. Sana, pagkahuman daw niya, bugay-bugay, sumpit ako, ito sa Tijina, pagkakuan, pagkawala na kuya dungdung ba? Ito man siya, ni gamay. Sama pa ako kakimal. Gahapon dali na. Tingnan mo kano sa copyright ko gahapon na. Dalayan ko ba? Dalayan ko dito padulong dito naglakaw padulong palit og dugpod. Copyright man ko. Ako nilang gidilit kay naa day na aki ana ko nga nagpamusik. Oh, mo to kuan gid siya copyright man ako pwede na ko gidilit. Nadili na ang kayo. Ito mo po bisi ko at gitar na na. Yung copyright mo ba?
Kasi nakalala.
audit.
Mana
Not
yung
just the
explain na?
software, but the whole process itself. So for your results, yeah, because in audit, remember, there is instances in which you have to make assumptions, and those assumptions have to be established na na-benchmark with yeah. So if there is no audit trail, then that could be a red flag because it is missing
Magbuhat po
one
tag kimchi ba dali ra po mahurot. At sara puro ra takuan.
So, as what you can read here, it says preservation is to the auditability of DIS because information systems have a lot going on internally. So, it's really a challenge to try and check, let's say, for example, if you do test data or if you do a check digit. I think I mentioned this in class the last time you met. Yeah, when you do check digits, if you force a check digit control, and if you do a parallel simulation with this or inject it into the original database, you also have to merge it from the database. You have to merge it. So, yung common trail, kasi sa yung merge, diba? So that's very difficult. It's very difficult. So you have to have documentation. So, you know, it's the same thing with the concept of the principles in an SF audit. So, even an audit, you also have all the documentation. Here, what is being audited in an annual audit is the documents. Like both ways. You audit
Hindi na,
same time, you make your own
wala mo.
So magkano ni sa Palawan?
Ah,
So,
Wala na sa
what
Palawan.
you document
doon naman
here is, so you
Silingan
have
naman pala.
logs,
Doon na, mas palaban.
the log of automatic transaction. So an example for this is if you use a middleware,
Chloe!
uh,
Ha!
scenario na
Chloe!
POS, and then
Chloe!
POS,
Pagdali kay na ay pizza.
software. Normally,
Pagdali og humagliko ka na ay pizza.
Ayaw, ayaw.
Pizza.
Ayaw na, delay na yan.
allow us to
Bilang
when
ka,
and how often the middleware will want to see data from the POS, which is the front end, to the back end.
Non ta
So, dapat start off din siya report or there is a lot of the trigger transaction.
Lahat tingog ni wala ka.
And then there should also be unique transaction identifiers. So you have these identifiers important, especially
Hello.
for
Di ba naman pala?
cash totals.
Hindi
And
man
of course, there are listings. So for example, since we have microchip system, no, public there is a system or there is a
Yung
list.
pasabot mo storya mo na istorya.
So at least when you
Di masabutan niya hindi pang storya.
magnetic control, so
Typical
there's
vision mo words yun.
to know when,
Pareho mata na.
where,
Kato kay Pizza Supreme. Kani kay Garden Express.
important,
Gulay.
dali ang trabaho and
Oh, gulay talaga.
you're trying to see where the food is, especially if you're using something, a software that is hosted in the cloud. So, kailangan set siya, error engine or error report. Now, for output controls, so we're done with input and then process, you have your batch controls and then totals. So now you have output controls. So output controls, the purpose for these
Nalikot
type of
ko eh.
controls is to ensure that the output of the AIS or the MIS is not misplaced, not misdirected, not corrupted, and very importantly, the privacy policy of the company or the business is not violated. Right. So it says here that batch systems are more susceptible to exposure, thus it requires greater control. So batch systems, we already discussed naman what are some batch controls, diba? So you have run-to-run controls, hash totals, no? So, what are normal output of batch systems? Okay? So, kanya siya na discussion, this
Saan naman sus?
is a little bit outdated, but apparently it's still part of the framework.
Kung saan
I
man magturo.
read the
Ako ba, kung magot man, magturo.
ideal framework that I uploaded from Sapa. Kay, if you read the list here in this slide, it would still imply printing ng output. So, karon gina-discourage naman ang pag-print, encourage na soft copy na lang dyan ang output. So, mo na ay dinhi makakita mo controls on batch systems output like unacceptable printing.
Ay, may patuloy naman nila.
No? So, when you print an output,
Ako saan na ay pepperoni?
say it's here, if there is a mistake or if this is a temporary document of
Yang usa?
personal
Wala.
information,
Simple talaga.
especially, these should be shredded. Hindi din siya balik po.
Ano may vegetable na eh?
Ano?
Tama?
Garden. Garden vegetable.
Not environment friendly. But then you also have to consider sa
Murag bati mag-online mo lang no? Kasabot man.
memory or the more storage that
Kaya kung saan
we use
di ko kasabot sa iyo.
iyaha pong
Naman.
carbon emission
Mga jargon kay over.
using cloud storage also are affected. So it's kind of a catch situation that we have here. But then, for the purposes of discussion here in IT audit, we will focus lang dyan on the sensitivity of information being printed or being the output of the system.
Attorney na.
So, there has to be
Okay.
for example, email, send ba ni mo sa
Sabihin siya,
or
audit.
ni generate
Nandun siya ka ng audit firm. Kaya hangban na.
where does it go to? So it's more
Yang
general
bala kay auditor sa
application controls ideally for
Bakod
output.
skill ang
Okay, when you see output of an information system, you're talking about reports, generated reports.
gamay.
Or
Part time lagi
affected
na
now.
sila mga istal dira.
So it's
Basta mga maestra sa mga
boiled down
bondo,
to the
may-
question as to the usage of these
Bakit?
reports. So these reports have information or have data that
Ay makaingon sila gamay kay dako man lang sweldo kung sa actual yun sila ma-field nila. Ikumpara sa academic field, kay gamay yung sweldo kumpara sa ato sa sector. Parang may public, dagko na. Sa public, wala may kuan sa public. Sa part sa public na ka, pero wala accounting.
Especially when you do printer tooling here, output tooling,
Di ba kung magtudok ang public kay dagko.
which has the following risks, you know, setting of output file,
Ambot ang anak ni Ate Lindy, nagtudok na ba?
the access to knowledge, change the number of copies of the printer,
Anak ni Ate Lindy ba?
Trabaho.
Bakit nakita na ko ang daan na handol ma?
Siya.
Hindi naman ko.
For example, if I will ask one of you, let's say, like, I'll ask Igo to print, let's say, 30 copies of this
Pizza.
very sensitive and confidential document. Okay? So there is a risk that especially in a
Pila ka, Luis?
database, what if I insert it in the Apple, instead of 30 copies, you want to copy for yourself, when you have 31, 31 So,
Dali rin na makabusukan ng pizza.
so kasi naan siya ay change the data. So that's also
Dali naman sa na, reach naman malakad sa.
output.
Nagamay ra kay ko ano? Bread.
This is actually more prevalent now because there is already trying to generate fraudulent copies of the big copies of an output. No? And there are some na pwede ramang gamit na picture lang and then do a little bit of creative editing and then make it as good as or as truthful as the original copy. So it makes it even more real because the risk is greater than ever.
Nasa sa kapit, nasa siya iyahang
This is an example.
Eh, mo yung kalindot niya, nakakain ba siyang maestra nga. Ang kanang audit firm niya, kaya mo na
Prevalent here.
Hindi ba siya
It's
itiyan?
also possible that the output is destroyed before building that.
Yan ba na yan?
Hindi, audit.
Audit po. Murang sa si Bilin ba? Kapag
Another output
Audit
control
for-
is
Dito na yung story nila ba kay nag-review sila for board exam eh. Sila gihapon eh. Kuan sila.
nag-renew sila po.
Yan, nagkuan sila, nagkaila sila sa pag-review sa sila. Review center ba?
Sila edad niya rin.
90 kape.
some offices, they use the
Roughly
similar
30s.
for everyone. So,
Bata pa, no?
And then you need a username to log in to photocopy or to print. No? So there's a communal printer, and then in the printer, naka-kuan lang siya na naka-input ra ang tanang users or usernames na makaprint to that printer. So that's a type of output control. So ang inyong username, wala siya naka-enroll na printer, then hindi ka maka-print na mo. So you have to find another printer. But again, even if this is a control, there is also a risk. Na misappropriate ang pag-use of printer. Like for example, si Reggie, naka-register siya na ang kaning username ni Reggie, pwede siya ka-Xerox or pwede siya from this company-issued laptop, maka-print siya to the, sa printer. What if makita ni Grace and then magamit niya ang laptop ni Reggie and then maka-print siya of an authorized document then ma-output mo, maluwa siya sa printer and then mali ang personal information. No? So, di ba, where siya talaga where this actually happens, no? For example, confidential information, and then a-trace the IP auditor na, ang username man, or access ni Mr. Reggie Aldave, na nag-print my name. So, Mr. Aldave was
Kuya, kami na wala, makadungka.
So, Mr. Chelsea Victoria. So, it actually happens.
Tulog ko din. Iya ba, joke na raw, tibog ba?
Even if a bridge program is installed, it can only mitigate, but it
Hindi ko
cannot
siya
eliminate risk as a whole. So, as a part of the end user also, you also have the vigilant also. So, dapat nakalock doon ang lock screen, as possible, karon, dili na kaayuhan ka na. For some students, dili na kayo.
Pwede na mag-ipala. Mga ito pa, kuan pa, diba? Mag-practice pa rin ako. Ako!
For
Sa
Ako naman eh.
So, it's a tighter
Ha?
way to secure the access. But for those na kailangan ng password, or password leadership, sa bulletin, so 1234 or 98765,
Yan, Elisa lang.
so very rare tayo sa
Elisa
sila
Bliss.
ma-serve of them. So, any print program control, I want you to check the last bullet, any special multi-part paper that belongs to certain fields. So that is actually being still practice karon, especially if ang i-print mga payslip.
Mas please, mag-inis pa man tayo.
Are confidential documents.
Luma na rin.
You, the supervisor, and
Pero di ko, wala klase mo
how
na.
much
Alas ko, trapasa di pa man.
now, the payslip is a document that, this period. No? So, ang most important paper is if makabantay mo, kanapit ang printer na sabak sa kaayos siya mong print, nakanangin, Epson, ganin if you're familiar, kanapit ang mga printers sa kanang mga tikitan, bitaw, ocean gel, kanang sabak kayo ng printer, bitaw, then gisig-gisig ang iyahang paper. That's an example of multi-part paper na kanang ma-print niya is the carbonized copy. Pero if you look at the document front, naka-close siya, covered siya. So that's an example of multi-part paper. So ma-block niya ang fields because ang print tahanan sa non-matrix printer is the carbon paper. So ang luta mo'y mabasahan. So if ihatag ang facelift, so dili makita bilang or deductions, so confidential information sa still covered.
Hindi ka lakaw-lakaw.
Isa may kauban ni ma'am.
ATM, kasi ito initial ng PIN number na ihatag sa along with ATM. Ito ka namin ito, naamoy ka nagsisilot sa kilid, kabantay mo na paper gaming na may carbon album na binana sa information like the initial PIN,
Ayan po kayo
sa kilid and paper. So, muna, yeah. That's the part paper. That's an example of the input control. So, for sensitive data, personal information that is not supposed to be seen by others, okay, dili siya first thing, ways, and data control, and there. So another control is supervision of the actual output being printed with, printing already. So for example, the guideline about print of, let's just say, something more related, system of the paper. So there's a supervision. So one batch is already done printing.
Hello?
Kuha na siya. Right then and there.
Hello?
Para dili siya makita sa laing. No? And then, can we wait? So, proper disposal of a work.
Oo, ma'am.
And supervised copies. So,
Hello?
especially,
Di pa ma.
like,
Ako ka, di pa makukupalugaw ka na, ma'am. Kay busy pa ba?
other firms also. So, for example, if we print a client ITR,
Sige, base na kung makaana.
and then nasa yung siya, we don't just put the client around kay
Try na ko nga, ma'am.
ito po ano kasi ganito to save
Okay.
space, gamitin ng likod, lintahan ng let's say transmittal or a letter, no? And then, di ba magkuha or mag-travel sa letter, depends lang sa backside of the paper. Uy, IPR, kaya Mr. Juan de la Cruz, like, money, the age of the sales, no? So, inadvertently, in the question of the paper, makangin na doon is ang mong blind client. So, we
Ano
don't
mo nga?
do that.
Alanganin.
This is
Budget yun.
wrong
Luluitin ko nga na.
wrong piece. So, we put it to the shredder or we take it out of the place, like something, and then we put it some place in which magamit namo again without compromising the confidential data printed on the other side of the paper. Yeah. So, but then again, the best way to dispose of it are no trace with any confidential information is to really shred or kanang i-itikot paper. Okay? So, next is data control group. So, when we do audit, we usually have a data control group, but right now, since Kalaskai are paper, some IT auditors, what they do is that they just test, they do an actual walkthrough of the actual process of the IS from input to output. And the output is either generated soft copy or printed as a hard copy,
Kailan na ta?
observation is already okay. No? And the required distribution.
Nanta, si Gaga man eh.
And user controls and required redaction. So similar
Natata,
to what
say,
I
tawag.
discussed earlier. So as user detection, only those authorized should be able to access certain methods, like your laptop, the printers, okay? And then report retention. So this is in relation to compliance as well. So for statutory requirements, there's a number of years na kailangan na soft copy, you should have to have this, and then dapat secretary hard copy. So let's just say for VIR, 5 years hard copy, 10 years at least soft copy, or even longer, pwede. No? And there should be just a number of copies in existence. But sa karon, even if ito a number of copies in existence, no one can really set up and restrict, no, a number of soft copies that one can generate. So it's still a challenge as how to do that as well. And then the existence of soft copies, backups, we already talked about this, some of the grandfather fathers have rule. How many backups the company is comfortable having, and it depends on their needs and the memory that they have, the storage that they have rather. And then it should be destroyed in a manner consistent with the sensitivity of its contents. Okay? So I would just like to share one policy that a client of ours had is, okay, they're an IT company, so they're not really big or hard copies na output, but rather they have this policy na if they upgrade from, let's say, i3 na laptop, everyone is familiar with all the processing system, the i3, i4, i5, i7. I think pinakapaspas karon si i9, yung Intel processing or Ryzen siya na. Pero pinakapaspas is the one which is for gaming and for heavy review and everything. So if for example, their employees kailangan ko upgrade or some top bracket, say i5 to i7, and if the laptop is owned by owned by the employee, if they're giving you sensitive data, let's say like healthcare healthcare software company sila. So of course, a lot of sensitive and personal information goes with their data. So what they do is they buy out, based on the net book value of the laptop if kailangan na ma-upgrade. So before they give the new laptop or new laptop to their employees, okay, kailangan ipa-destroy ang motherboard. Of course, assuming na properly backup set ang data ng laptop. So, pagtangon ng motherboard, and then when you say destroy siya like sinubol, nagpupo ng video, so they really make sure na tama din siya. And then, the only backups that are authorized are the ones within their database. Okay, like disposal, masensitive na sila ang disposal ng electronic waste. So that's why it's makabantay kung class na there are bins in malls like in Ayala and SM na you can pwede ninyo labay ng electronic waste like the power bank, your keyboard, your console, ang mga monitor ninyo bukas na. Okay, they also have elements na harmful siya sa environment, ignore siya ilabay sa trash can. The same way na, like, ng mga surface of chemicals and whatnot. So, hindi na ni mo basta-basta pwede ma-dispose as you would or malata na hindi malata ng mga items. So, if you have a new laptop, it is best na whether you just keep it, naman ko uban ko ka na ilapit ay paligya ay old example. Understandably, they would want to exchange cash for that. But you have to make sure also that whatever information you have is erased. Yeah. Kaya para dili siya magiging advantage to whoever gets your answer. This is why ako personally, trouble na phone. Ako ay baligyan ko yung phone. So either I erase everything and give it to my niece or give it to someone I know na for example, na information sa the phone and I know more or less yung pangalan ako or pangalan ko na phone. No? So for example, ang SSN number, nakuha somewhere else, I know that it's saved on my phone, and I would like to validate asa na siya. So ako, as is the personal preference, I do not sell any of my gadgets. So bahala na gusto na hindi siya mo on or because there is still a possibility my information still inside on the gadget. So I don't want to do that. So I'm not sure if both gadgets or if you're aware of mga scandals in the early 2000, late 2000, early 2010. Kay siya yung cellphone na nagpauwang o hard drive, like Easter egg, yung nagay dito, save dito, wala ko na siya na-different ipakalat, like iskabi, or yang ka ng PC, yang ikaayo, nagay dito video, pictures, makalat. So, partly, isa ang or she deemed you to be very important, then wala I mean, nasave mo siya sa na-destroy siya sa environment. Pero, sa parang nandun kaya, it is still a great area white hackers or ethical hackers have to be a step or two steps forward because stop naman ito ay pag-generate information. Sabi na, the generation of false information. If you're familiar with these things, for example, your body or someone else's face doing things that you're not supposed to be doing. That looks delicious. But even if it's same person, even this capable of doing that. So if you do not destroy any sensitive personal confidential data that you should have destroyed, remember that lack of judgment or lack of neglect and action, that's what reputation, so to speak, for it could give you in economic or financial ruin. So very important to update the social media. What you post online, what we upload is online, etc. So it makes perfect sense. So makes business sense. Practical sense to invest in a good and interesting here. Okay. So controlling your output, yearly, the following brand, culture, if these controls are not properly in place, then you have systems for carbon controls and carbon controls. So the bigger carbon controls deals with the actual handling of the information and the gadget or the data that is supposed to be passed from one step to another. Right? So that's it for SAPA. So input, process, and output control. So any questions so far? No questions?
Nothing.
Kasabot sa next. Pinigabot sa midterm after. By the way, the midterms will be after CPA week. So I will give you the whole week next week to enjoy your CPA week. This is your time to shine. Okay? So,
Basta siya.
the last topic for the midterm coverage is black box and white box test. So this is application controls. Just okay. Testing application. Wala question ha? Sure? It's still recording. Okay, it's still recording. I think you can access the recording sa laptop. This will be, ayaw lang i-comment nyo ni kuanhan, isa mo na yung output control. So, it's not determinated other classes aside from ours. So after midterms, our discussion will now focus on audit of the revenue cycle, audit of consumption cycle, or tuition magawas. Can you see my screen? Okay naman. Okay. Alright, so thank you. Okay, right. So next so earlier, when examined, we were more focused on general controls, you know? So your import, process, control. At the minimum, those should have been put into place. And I would want to emphasize that the IPO control will vary among different factors. Okay? But at the minimum, we are just basic concept to put controls in each phase of the system is supposed to be mandatory. So very lang yan, depending on the complexity of the nature of the business, the industry that they are in, and the budget, of course, that they're relying.
Basta, ano ko, mga paan akong kanon, kaya
Application. So the software is because the software and the application at the same time you also have on the software. Now, auditing the software, auditing controls based on the software will entail so you have auditing around the computer and auditing through the computer. So auditing through the computer is also known as black box audit, the black box control, and then auditing through the computer is the white box control. So we will be using studying for the CPA. Okay. So what's the difference? Of course, the difference is different
partner sila sa company. On mo ang auditor kay independent yung mapaalas unless and pagipiyado ka sa kaya lahat kayo sila may tag-iya sa audit ko. So partner
There's no other black box. Review.
niya magpa-audit sa mahal ng kampanya.
What is a black box? Meron ka na sugat? Who's here has heard of the term black box? It's actually, it's a term not normally associated with IT, but normally it's a term associated with the aviation industry. If you try that one out, or search, Google, Gemini, or whatever you use, what's a black box? Sarah? Here's Miss Mancera. So what is a black box?
When suspect is something sensitive to the outside, but we don't know like what's happening inside.
Okay. So, what is a black box? I don't understand a black box is, pero what's a black box? How is a black box used in the airplane?
Aircraft memory,
It is.
aircraft memory.
How does it work? Miss Mancera, are you there?
The doctor serves as the aircraft memory, providing a detailed record of its final moment, which is essential for understanding and preventing future trouble.
Alright. Okay. So a black box is actually a planes recorder. No? So this is an example of a black box. Dili siya black, orange na ano siya. Normally it's painted in a conspicuous color because if ever na ay like plane malfunction or crashes, diba? If for example na yung plane na mo crash, ang una dyan pangitaon ana is the black box of the plane. So every plane has this. And airline investigators would think after them think the black box. This is usually placed in the cockpit near sa pilot area, sa captain's area. No? Like what Ms. Mancera mentioned, it details is like a log of what happened during the plane movement before it descended and before it crashed. No? So what is it for? The black box will be the jumping point of airline investigators to determine what really happened. So it's a recorder. So for example, kung malayo ang mga pilots during the last few moments before the crash, so they would know ano nag-panic sila, and it also even has a record as to what buttons they push, kung sa'y kailangan sa tawag na maneuvers na kailangan buhat prior to, an accident happening. So, black box is really very important. So, why am I asking you guys about this? So, mas dahil niyo topic anong itawag siya ng black box? And anong itawag siya ng white box approach? Now, the black box testing, diba, when you have a recorder is when you want to know what happened, you play it, diba? And any black box, any program is gonna make the book. You put it in a player, and then it plays, so you listen, you know, or wait, because if videos here are output format, you just listen. So, investigator or auditor is just a passive person, just a bystander. So, mamino lang siya, natanaw lang siya. Okay? Then, the action comes right after. For example, mo di ay ni siya na mo di ay naisunod ang upang airways, airplane, something. No? So, it gives you the record of something capable. But it does not tell you lalo na hitabo ng sakto. It's the same logic with black box testing. Now, black box testing is also called auditing around the computer. You do not audit the computer itself. You do not audit the software itself. Rather, you audit the software by looking at what goes around it. Okay? So you have here the black box, as you can see on the screen. So this is the program. When you do black box testing, you only focus on two things: the input and the output. Remember, when we do an audit, and there is an assertion by your client, let's say like violation, no? If the client has an assertion, you as an auditor, you already have a pre-formed output already in mind. For example, on valuation, first the accounts receivable should be valued at net heritable value, right? Diba? So they are less allowance for that for account. If your client will pay, our assertion is accounts receivable is 1 million net and allowance that for account. You already have an expectation na may notion na siya allowance for that for account, in which you will have to do substantive tests to prove their assertion. It's the same thing and it's a black box testing. You have an input and you have an output. You do not carry the program itself. Rather, you look at the input and output. You audit around the computer. This is basically saying, let's say, ang ako input data is 1+1. Iwag na naman sa program, dapat 2+1. If 3 then yung magawa, or something is wrong. No? So the program is not working as it should be. At again, wrong. Tapos, wala na lagi yung mga. Okay, do you understand? This is black box testing. Okay? So this is how it works. So you have your input, and then you have your application. The application processes data from the master file, and then the auditor reconciles with the output produced by the application. So simply put, the assertion put in input, the assertion of your client detects our application is updated, we have put the necessary controls for it to work perfectly. The output that it should give should be fine. So this is the people that it does. So for an example, in a black box approach, this is the counterpart for your method control aspect testing, testing, function testing. Okay? So in black box testing, we normally use functional terms.
Wala ginagawa sa akin po.
For what, they are accountants, we are auditors, we're not necessarily experts. So if your knowledge of IT algorithms is limited, totally limited to black box testing. So hence, so limited ra ang imong expertise ani black box testing. Therefore, this is more appropriate if you, as an IT auditor, you assess level of risk as the board. Okay? So, in this being applied if simple application, something that is don't necessarily audit the application itself. You look at the external, processes that it also has. Kasi hindi na siya high level with understanding of the software and needed. So dapat, you have the level of USS should be low for you to use black box testing. Right? On the other hand, white box testing is auditing through the computer. Okay? So earlier, it's auditing around the computer. So the auditor is just a bystander, no lang siya, magtanong siya, observe siya, narrative based on how the input process output is being done. No? These are the assertion given to the client. So this time, black box testing is more substantive than black box testing. So why? It's because it relies on in-depth understanding of the internal logic of the application. What does it mean? Meaning, if earlier black box testing kailangan paulo level because it's used for simple applications only. If you are dealing with, let's say, a ERP or really for a legacy system that is specifically mounted for a certain department of processes and intricate, intricately woven algorithms, the need for testing. And white box testing needs higher technical expertise because the audit procedures employed here are more precise. No? So mas quickly, the process of what the key here is this scheme, it uses small volume of carefully crafted custom test transactions to verify specific aspects of logic and control. Take note of the term logic. So meaning the software itself is being audited. And not just the input, the process, and the output. The software itself. So that is why it's very important that, for example, hopefully you will be decision makers, probably a company that you work for, when the companies will decide to adopt a certain software. It is important that you need to know who made the software. Is it an IT professional with back? Is it an accountant? Or is it a team of an IT professional? This is comprised of IT professionals and corporate accountants. So if an IT professional is the logic means, that hindi mako. So, yun ang mako ang process software. So the logic that the software is being here sa pag-process na data. So masayop na meron ang inyong reports or output. So that's also very important. Okay? Now, so these are examples of white box test methods. So if earlier it's a black box, so you have flow charts, narratives. So you have a couple of tests. No? So we will just emphasize here, siya. Okay. Let me just check. Okay, kasi pwede lang din natin ma-round this afternoon so that manage the coverage for next year. So you have the following: authenticity, accuracy, completeness, and redundancy test, as well as betrayal and rounding error tests. Okay? So those tests can be a combination of the following. So we have test, data, method, integrated test facility, and parallel simulation or generalized software.
Hi, sir.
So test data method is the same as check engine.
Be.
Usually usually
Yeah,
check
for
this
that.
being used for for the test data methods. So it's used to establish the application processing integrity of the software. So the test data method uses its test steps. So what is comprised, what comprises rather a test step is first valid data, and then purposefully selected invalid data, and then every possible input error, logical processes, and irregularity. So this is how it is done. So the procedure is you have predetermined results and expectations, you run the test bed, and then compare. So it's like saying, like for example, you're going to test, let's say, QuickBooks. No? So you have valid data from QuickBooks. So you have selected, like, let's say, 5 transactions, 5 valid transactions from your client sa QuickBooks. So you also get purposefully selected invalid data. So the invalid data could be something that kamo minalhin mo, ang auditor minalhin mo, or kanang sayop sa client na dapat na-reject na siya because sayop siya. Alright? So aside from that, you put in every possible input error, logical process, and irregularity. Like for example, let's just say, ang imong debit and imong credit, imong input per daily balance ng debit and credit. What is supposed to be your predetermined result is daily balance and debit and credit. Diba? Normally, software like QuickBooks, iyang i-reject ng input. Now, what if pag-running sa test data ninyo,
Maura man tayo Gcash sir no? Atay mo number?